Hey guys, welcome back to a brand new Ninjago video here on the channel. My name is TannerFishies. In today's video, we are going to be discussing my updated for Dragons Rising Season 1 ranking of all of the Ninjago villains, or at least as they appear on this tier list right here. Now, on this tier list, we have the majority of the Ninjago villains, not every single Ninjago villain to ever exist, but most of them. The majority of the main ones, all of the ones that I could think of in preparation for today's video. I for sure am missing a few random ones here and there, but these are the primary ones right here. And for our tiers, we have perfect, amazing, decent, meh, bad, and terrible. This video will of course be an update video to a video that I made a few years ago following Ninjago Seabound, where I ranked all of the villains on a tier list like this, but since it's been a few seasons since Seabound, I figured it was time for an update. So without further ado, let's get started. Just keep in mind this is all just my own opinion, not the objective truth. After the video is over, feel free to let me know down below in the comments what your favorites and least favorites are in terms of Ninjago villains. So let's start with Garmadon. Obviously, Garmadon is perfect. Garmadon is one of, if not the best characters throughout the entirety of Ninjago's catalog. I think he gets better every time Ninjago does something new with him, and like I said, he's like the perfect Ninjago character. Can't really go wrong with Garmadon. No matter what form of Garmadon you are looking at, there is something to love. So perfect for Garmadon, one of the best villains out there. Samakai. I'm gonna put Samakai in the decent category, I suppose. I don't hate Samakai. There are just some villains that are obviously better than Samakai, and Samakai hasn't really done a whole lot in the show, only being around for a small period of time before being killed off, and then brought back, not really doing much in Day of the Departed either, so decent. He's fine, he's kind of on the middle here, but I'm feeling nice today, so decent. Cruncha. I'm going to put him in meh. Same deal with Knuckle. These two kind of go hand in hand, appearing more so as a duo, and that's where they shine. But like I said, there are other villains that are better than these two. I'm going to put them in the meh category. And Whiplash, I guess I'll put him in the same category. All of these skeleton generals I kind of lump together as one distinct unit, so they all kind of act together, and they are all kind of meh. Pythor, I will say, is amazing. I love Pythor. Granted, in Crystallized and Day of the Departed, I didn't like him as much as previous Ninjago seasons, but still, with Pythor in the early seasons, he was a force to be reckoned with. He was definitely a strong villain in the earlier seasons. So, amazing for Pythor, just not perfect tier like Garmadon and some other characters that we have yet to get to. Scales. I will say decent for Scales. Like Samakai, he didn't really do a whole lot, but when he was in power, I suppose he was competent enough. These days, Scales is more of a good guy, more of a ninja ally, so I will say decent in terms of his villainy. The Serpentine Generals, I'm not super fond of. They have great designs, Acidicus, Scalador, and Finctum. They have great designs, don't get me wrong, but they don't really do much in the show apart from being there for a few seconds each. Finctum, out of all of these, probably has the most to do, but still, I kind of lump all these ones together. I'll put them in the bad category, for now at least. The Great Devourer. How do I feel about the giant angry snake? I'll say decent, sure, why not? The Great Devourer has a lot of history throughout the Ninjago timeline, and in Season 1, she was definitely a formidable opponent. The ninja struggled against the Devourer, so I will say decent tier. It's okay. Doesn't really have a whole lot of personality, though, being just a giant angry snake, like I said, but I feel like that's also part of the charm, so decent. The Overlord, I'm gonna say perfect. I know a lot of people don't like the Overlord. I like the Overlord. I like all of his appearances, whether it be Season 2, Season 3, or Crystallized. I think all of those are pretty good for the character, and he's Ninjago's big bad. It's hard not to be fascinated by that. Sure, he's kind of just evil for the sake of being evil. He doesn't really have a motivation, but I don't care. I think he's awesome. He's a very intimidating and scary villain too. Perfect. What can I say? I like the Overlord a lot. Some folks might disagree, but this is not their list. It's my list, so Perfect. General Kozu is kind of meh. He doesn't really have a character outside of just angry stone guy, so I'm gonna say meh. I like his design, though. Very cool design. The giant stone warrior is about the same. In fact, these two are more or less the same in terms of lacking personality and also just being hulking giants. I mean, this one's more giant than this one, but you know what I mean. Still meh, in my opinion. I'm not super fond of this guy. He's fine. General Cryptor, I will say decent for Cryptor. He's kind of like Kozu, except he's a robot, so that makes him 10 times cooler. I also like his design. I think his design is pretty sweet. I like how he kind of toys with Zane a little bit too, both in Season 3 and in Day of the Departed. He kind of has more of a personality than Kozu. Nindroid, though, Nindroid is awesome. In fact, I will say amazing tier for Nindroid. I like Nindroid quite a bit. He's kind of like, Cryptor, except he's actually a lot more angry and more full of personality. That sets him apart from the other robots, and I just feel like he's pretty fun, He's the short, leftover Nindroid. What is there to not love about that? He is awesome. He deserved better. He didn't deserve to die like how he died in the show, that's for sure. Master Chen is perfect. One of my favorite Ninjago villains ever. I feel like Chen is kind of like Ninjago's Joker. I've said that before, but it's true. He's just psychotic, he's evil, he's crazy, and I love everything about him. Him turning his entire army into snakes for no reason, just awesome. That's what we need more of. Villains that are just doing villainous things just because they can. Chen is basically the definition of that. Plus Ninjago history, he's got a lot going on. Clouse, I will say amazing. I like Clouse a lot, especially following Season 4 and the Dark Island Trilogy. Clouse has a lot going on. Clouse himself can make for a pretty decent villain by himself. He's not always going to be Chen's right-hand man, He has his own thing going on. He has his own history, his own beef with Garmadon. So yeah, amazing tier for Clouse. I think he is perfectly fine and a pretty good villain by himself when he gets his chance to shine. Next up, Moro. I will also say amazing. I'm not as big of a fan of Moro as everyone else is, but I still respect Moro. I still think he is a very good villain. I like his personality, his backstory, his origin. I think all of that makes sense, and it makes sense why he's evil. Like I said, he's not as great as like Garmadon or the Overlord, but still, Moro is a pretty deep character. I understand why people like him, and I like him too. Amazing tier for Moro. It's hard not to like Moro. The Preeminence is kind of like the Devourer in the sense that it's a big angry monster, so I guess I'll put it in the same category. It was definitely intimidating, and I like the concept of an entire realm being just this sole being. I think that looks really cool as well. Kind of wish we got a set of the Preeminent, but alas, we never did. All of the Ghost Warriors are kind of interchangeable to me. Soul Archer is the best. I guess meh tier, though. Wraith, he's not that great. Bansha is alright, I suppose. And Gultar, I don't like Gultar. I think Gultar is one of the worst characters ever introduced. I think he's annoying, he's not funny, he's loud, he's obnoxious, terrible. I don't like characters like that. The other ghosts, like I said, they're fine, but it's hard to distinguish them from one another, except for Soul Archer and Bansha. These two, no. Bottom of the barrel for me. Next up, we have the Sky Pirates. Nadakon is pretty great. I like him a lot too. Probably one of the more evil villains that Ninjago has ever seen. And he actually won too, when you think about it. He managed to take out all of the ninja individually, and if it wasn't for Jay's final wish just being pure luck, Nadakon would have won. And I kind of want to see an alternate future where that actually happened. But still, Nadakon, perfect tier. Like I said, he's one of Ninjago's better villains. His motivation also makes sense. He originally had no problem with the ninja until he found out that Ninjago was destroyed. I like that a lot. His motivation makes sense. He's not evil just for the sake of it. He's evil for a reason. And we need more villains like Nadakon. Clancy, he's alright. I like his character enough. He's not really evil, though. He's not like an evil villain, but, he's fine. Decent tier. Doubloon, I'll put him in meh. I like him. I like his mystery, but he doesn't really have a whole lot of personality outside of that mysterious origin. How does he know Spinjitzu? I don't know. who cares? Flintlock, I will say decent as well. I like Flintlock quite a bit. I like his character during Skybound. I like how he kind of rebelled against Nauticon. I mean, sure, Clancy did that too, but Flintlock, I feel like that hit a lot harder. So Flintlock, decent. Dogshank is kind of meh. You know, she's fine. And same deal with the monkey. I don't know. The monkey I'll probably put in bad tier, just because he's my least favorite of the Sky Pirates. Dogshank is fine. I like her enough, I guess, and the monkey, not so much. He's just a monkey, kind of boring. I like how he's a robot, though, but that doesn't really save him from being boring, so bad tier. Master Yang, I'm also going to say bad tier. I like how he doesn't want to be forgotten. I think his motivation makes sense and is understandable, but his dialogue, the writing behind this character, good lord, no. Absolutely not. I think that's just dreadful, especially during Day of the Departed. He was fine in Possession, Season 5. What happened in Day of the Departed? Could not tell you. Bad tier for Master Yang. Next up, we got the Time Twins. Crux. Crux is fine. I don't mind Crux too much. Decent tier for Crux, but I do prefer Acronix. I think Acronix is the better of the two. No real reason. I just think Acronix did more in the show, and he's far more memorable than Crux over here. Crux does have a lot of history, though, in the world of Ninjago, just in general. But the Time Twins themselves, I still think they are pretty good villains by themselves, individually, and as a team. But I do like Acronix just a tiny bit more. So amazing, decent, both very good, though. The Vermilion Warriors, though, I don't think are very good at all. Makia, I'm going to put in the bad tier. And these two knuckleheads can go down in terrible. I just don't like the Vermilion Warriors. I don't really care for them as a concept. I think that Makia is at least somewhat competent, so she gets the bad tier. If she didn't have a character, or if she was as stupid as these two, they would all be in terrible. Next up, we dive on into the Oni Trilogy with Harumi. Another perfect villain, I'd say. I like Harumi quite a bit. I liked her during the Oni Trilogy. I liked her during Ninjago Crystallized. I just like Harumi. I think her design is also really nice. It complements her character extremely well. No real quarrels with Harumi. I know a lot of people don't like her because she was redeemed. I'm not one of those people. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I still like Harumi as a character, so perfect tier in my opinion. I don't think she's as bad as everyone else says. Kilo, he's fine. Decent. I like that he's funny, and I like his design too. Mr. E, I'm going to put in amazing. I like that character quite a bit. First of all, he's a robot, and I like robots, so huge plus. And also, he's silent. He's mysterious. I think he's awesome. He's a very mysterious force. Definitely my favorite Sons of Garmadon general, aside from Harumi, of course. Ultraviolet, I will also say decent. If Chen is Ninjago's Joker, she's Ninjago's Harley Quinn. Same thing, same personality, just as crazy, and I like that. I like her design too. All of these Sons of Garmadon generals left an impression on me. They're all pretty good, in my opinion. Iron Baron, I'm going to put him in meh. Not a huge fan of the Iron Baron. He has grown on me over the years, but he's still not my favorite Ninjago bad guy. In the Oni Trilogy, he was probably the weakest out of all of the villains. The Omega, I think is pretty cool. Granted, you can't really tell what he's saying half the time, and again, like the Overlord, he's kind of just evil for the sake of it, but the Oni had been hyped up for 2 seasons before the Omega showed up, and when he showed up, he definitely left an impression. No real complaints from me. Moving on to Season 11 villains, we have Esphira. Esphira, I'm going to say meh tier as well. She's fine. She's not my favorite villain out there. I find her motivation to be interesting, but also weak at the same time. I liked her a lot more in Crystallized, if that, makes you guys feel any better about Esphira being in the meh tier. She's fine. Char, no, Char, I don't like you at all. Again, welcome to the idiot tier. Might as well rename this the idiot tier, because that's what's going on here. Zane as the Ice Emperor. I will say decent. He was actually pretty cold. pun totally intended, during Ninjago Season 11. He was definitely intimidating in this form, and you find out more about what he did, the history of the Ice Emperor and the Neverrealm as well, and you start to like him more as a villain. I thought that Zane as a villain with no memories of his past, that was handled pretty well. Not perfect, but still pretty well. Decent tier. General Vex, I guess meh tier. I don't know. General Vex I'm not a huge fan of. He's alright, but I'm not going to remember Vex over any of these other characters anytime soon. There are definitely characters and villains that are better than Vex, that's for sure. Boreal, big scary ice dragon. I don't know. I'm going to say bad tier, I guess. There's not really much to him. You know what? Meh. I'll bump him up to meh. Because Ice Dragon, that's a pretty cool concept. Again, pun totally intended. But still, he's not that great. No personality, really, except for being a big angry dragon. He's not like the Devourer or the Preeminent, so I will say meh. Unagami, I'm also going to say meh. He was fine. I like him more as a misunderstood AI, though, as opposed to a villain. And I suppose that's what Prime Empire was trying to showcase with this character specifically. But I will say meh. He's not that memorable. Prime Empire in general isn't that memorable to me, so meh tier. Sure. Next up, the Skull Sorcerer. I will say decent tier for Vangelis. I thought he was handled really well in Master of the Mountain and Crystallized. I liked him in both of those seasons, especially Master of the Mountain. I like his relationship with Vanya, how twisted that is too. It makes him a better villain. You know, villains are supposed to be evil. I don't understand this this modern mindset where it's like, oh, villains are bad characters. You can't like villains. Yes, you can. I don't see anything wrong with liking villains as characters. Villains can make interesting characters just as much as heroes, and Vangelis is a good example of that. Griefbringer, same category as Boreal, just a big angry dragon, except Griefbringer is at least a skeleton dragon. That puts him above the ice dragon just a tiny bit, but still these two are kind of about the same for me. Chief Mamadis, I will say... I'll probably say bad tier. He's not really a villain, so if I'm ranking these based on how good of a villain they are, he's not really a villain. He's more of just a misunderstood, frankly, a hero. He helped out the ninja during Seabound. So I guess I'll say bad tier. He's also not that memorable, too. I mean, I'm sure a lot of Ninjago fans couldn't even tell you his name, let alone what he was to the Ninjago series. So I guess bad tier. Kalmar... I will say decent for Kalmar. He's kind of like a reskinned Pythor to an extent, but still he's not that bad. He was definitely one of the better Wildbrain Saga villains, but he still doesn't really compare to some of the other villains in perfect or amazing tier. But still, Kalmar, he was fine. I liked how he went out. I like how his story wrapped up. But still, he's just fine. Decent tier. Wajira, same thing as the Devourer, big angry snake, so I will put her in the same category as the Devourer. I also liked her history too. You know, she's got some stuff going on in Ninjago history. That's always fun to see. So, decent tier. I like how she flooded Ninjago City. That was pretty entertaining. Fugitive. I'm not the biggest Fugitive fan out there, but admittedly he has grown on me as time has gone on. Still not getting out of the meh tier. He can hang out in here with Cruncha and Knuckle and all these other similar villains. Fugitive, he's fine. I like his design. If they ever released a minifigure of him, I'd probably get it. That's for sure. The Mechanic. I guess decent tier. The Mechanic is another character that Ninjago fans were surprised was villainous for some reason. You saw that a lot with Ninjago Crystallized. They were commenting about how the Mechanic wasn't really the kindest to Nia. No kidding. He's a bad guy. It's kind of what they do. So I will say decent tier for the Mechanic. In terms of a recurring Ninjago villain, you could definitely do worse. I mean, he's not as great as, again, some of these other characters in the perfect and amazing tiers, but still pretty solid. I did not mind the Mechanic during Skybound, Sons of Garmadon, Crystallized, any of his appearances. I thought he was perfectly fine, only as a secondary antagonist. I don't think he could be a leading man by himself. Ronin... meh. He's kind of like an anti-hero too, depending on what day of the week it is. Not much else to say about Ronin. He's fine. you know, depending on what you pay him or who pays him, he's going to be evil or good. Can't really get a read on Ronin, so he's just meh tier. As a villain, he's not that great. Captain Soto, same thing, meh tier. I don't know, Soto and Ronin kind of go hand in hand for me, in the sense that they could be a lot better than they are, and they're not the best villains ever, but still, they're fine. Just meh tier. Hanging out together in the meh tier. Next up, we have Misdemeanor. I really like Misdemeanor. Probably a lot more than I should, but I will say decent tier, because why not? I thought she was perfectly fine in Seabound, also crystallized. Again, like the mechanic, she's kind of like a C tier villain. I don't think she could ever be a leading lady in a season by herself, but maybe she could. Maybe she could surprise me. I also like her design. Not crazy about the mohawk, but I gotta admit it has grown on me as time has gone on. I like her design a lot, actually, and she just got an official minifigure too, so I guess that's a plus. Next up, we have Reflectra, who was totally here the whole time, and I totally did not forget about her. Same deal with Mogra down there too. Reflectra! I kind of like her a lot, actually. I'm going to say decent. I know she was only in like one Ninjago short, but my goodness, did she leave an impression on me. I love her design. Very sparkly, very iconic. I really want them to make a minifigure of her. Kind of sad that they haven't made one yet, honestly, but still, Reflectra, I like her a lot. I hope she ends up being in more stuff as time goes on. That'd be awesome. Again, probably a little bit more of a fan of her than I should be, but I still like her quite a bit. Mr. F is kind of the same as Mr. E, just not as cool. Of course, you could argue that these guys are the same person, but they're not. Crystallized kind of makes it a point to say that Mr. F is different than Mr. E, so that's why they are separate here. Decent, all things considered, though. He's cool. He's a robot. I like that. I like his updated crystallized design as well. Not too shabby, not too shabby. Kind of like a cheap knockoff, though, of Mr. E, but still, not too bad at all. I think he's pretty cool, all things considered. Now we get into Dragon's Rising bad guys, and some other ones too. Empress Beatrix. I thought she was pretty good in Dragon's Rising. I will say decent tier. I like her design quite a bit. I like her hair. I think that looks really nice, complements her design quite a bit. I'm not sure if there's any redeeming Beatrix. I thought she was a really consistent and really convincing villain, and I think that's where her character should stay. Will she return at some point? I hope so, because I feel like she was great in Dragon's Rising Season 1. Can only get better if you decide to bring her back. Lord Ras as well, I will put in the decent tier. Lord Ras didn't really have a whole lot going on in Season 1 following Part 1. He was kind of just in the background for the entirety of Part 2. But I do like his history that was established during Season 1 in general. A lot of mystery surrounding this character, and I can only imagine that in Dragon's Rising Season 2, he will move up the list for me. Seems like he's on the right track, just needs a little bit more development, dare I say. Raptin, he's alright. Meh tier. I don't like Raptin as much as everyone else does. I don't think he's as funny as everyone else does either. He has his moments, sure, but for the most part he is kind of annoying, bordering on these couple of categories sometimes, but he is a lot better than some of these other characters, so I can't put him too low. Dr. LaRoe. I will actually say decent for Dr. LaRoe. Again, villainous people doing villainous things. How shocking. But still, I would argue that Dr. LaRoe is more evil than these two, arguably. But still, with Dr. LaRoe, I thought she was an awesome villain. Not a great person. Don't get my words twisted here. You can like villains for doing villainous things. So I will say decent for Dr. LaRoe. I do not endorse the capturing and draining of dragons, though. No. Dorama. Sure. Why not? I'm not a huge fan of Dorama. I think he's a lot. I don't think he's funny. I think he's too much. So I will say terrible. He kind of reminds me of Gultar and Char. So I can't put him any higher. I was going to put him in this tier, but then I thought to myself, that's kind of disrespectful to Master Yang. And if you're disrespectful to Master Yang, you're going in the tier below, because Yang is already near the bottom of the barrel. Dorama, yeah, I just don't care. He's not that great. Jordana, I kind of like Jordana. I will put her in the decent tier. Now, like Lord Ras, I'm expecting her to grow as time goes on and get more villainous as the series continues, because she definitely has a lot more to do, and in Season 2 she will be doing more. So I will say decent for the time being. Excited to see where she goes, and I like her petty jealousy. I like how no one really knows who she is. I think that's funny. So decent tier for Jordana. Naneko. By the way, these three are from Spinjitzu Brothers. Naneko, she was fine. I liked her in the book. I thought she had some interesting history, being kind of like a student of the first Spinjitzu master, having some history with Wu and Garmadon as well. I'd recommend reading the books. I thought she was a lot of fun in that story in particular. Next up, we have Tannerbrax, a puppeteer who's obsessed with Jin magic. He was pretty cool too. I will also say decent tier. I like his design. He's definitely a lot scarier compared to other Ninjago bad guys out there, and I feel like that makes him a lot more terrifying and memorable. Like, just look at that design. And plus the fact that he can turn people into puppets, horrifying. But awesome. Decent tier. The Chroma, also from Spinjitzu Brothers. Another big angry monster, kind of meh tier. I don't really remember if the Chroma has a personality or not, but if I don't remember, it probably didn't stick with me if he did, so meh tier, all things considered. Basically a big angry cloud. What else can you say about that? Lord Mogra, who was also here the whole time. No need to go back and check. He totally wasn't added midway through the video. But I will say decent for Lord Mogra. For those that don't know, Lord Mogra was the main villain in the Garmadon solo comic, and he has some history with Garmadon, that's for sure. But in the comic, he was awesome. He brought out the best of Garmadon and also the worst of himself, so I feel like that definitely deserves him a spot in the decent category. And I also like his design. He's pretty cool. I like his mustache. Next up, we have Tech Wu. Kind of meh. As a villain, Master Wu really didn't do a whole lot. He kind of just, you know, smacked people around a little bit for a couple of episodes and called it good from there. I like his design, though. Super evil. Super awesome looking. And finally, with Lloyd, as a villain, I'm going to have to say bad tier. He works better as the Green Ninja, as a hero, and I feel like a lot of people would agree with that. I don't like evil Lloyd that much, so bad tier. As a villain, he's bad. As a character, he's up there, that's for sure. But this is ranking villains, remember. With that being said, though, guys, I think that's everybody. That is all of the Ninjago villains that I have ranked for the update for my villain ranking. We got the perfect tier, amazing, decent, meh, bad, and terrible. I stand by all of these decisions. I feel like for the most part, Ninjago villains are pretty great. Hopefully Dragons Rising Season 2 continues to give us some great villains with developing Lord Ras even further and introducing characters like Cinder. Can't wait to see what they get up to in Dragons Rising Season 2. But until then, this is my update for Dragons Rising Season 1. Like I said, feel free to leave all of your thoughts down below in the comments. Drop your favorites and least favorites in terms of Ninjago villains. And I appreciate you guys watching today's video. Kind of a long one, but I hope you guys enjoyed nonetheless. If you guys did enjoy, feel free to like and subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and I will talk to you guys again very, very soon. Peace.